So the backlash is growing this morning after prosecutors dropped all charges against Empire actor Jussie Smollett and then sealed the case. The Chicago Police Union, so furious, they're calling for a federal investigation into how all this was handled. And the last 24 hours or so have not cooled off Mayor Rahm Emanuel, still fired up about the sudden reversal, saying this just a short time ago.
You have the state's attorney's office saying he's not exonerated. He actually did commit this hoax. He's saying he's innocent and his words are true. They better get their story straight, because this is actually making fools of all of us.
Well, back in February, Smollett claimed that he was the victim of a racist, homophobic attack, but he quickly turned from victim to suspect, charged with 16 felony counts related to filing a false police report. Now, just 5 weeks later, prosecutors unexpectedly dropped those charges, with each side now telling a different story. Prosecutors released a statement saying, "We did not exonerate Mr. Smollett. The charges were dropped in return for Mr. Smollett's agreement to do community service and forfeit his $10,000 bond to the city of Chicago." But as he was leaving court, Smollett maintained his innocence.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of.
NBC's Miguel Almaguer joins me now. Miguel, in a world where very few things surprise us anymore, people were stunned by this, not the least of them the police and the mayor in Chicago. What happened here?
Well, Chris, many people are still trying to figure that out. It is a confusing story. Prosecutors say they stand behind police, they stand behind the investigation, and they also believe there was plenty of evidence to convict Jussie Smollett. But they are essentially saying here they didn't consider this a violent or a very serious crime in nature in terms of other crimes that they prosecute, like homicides, so that this was the best resolution for the case. Of course, that is not sitting well with many people who say Jussie Smollett elevated this case. He went public. He did this for fame. He did this for notoriety, and that the motive here is reason enough that he should have been prosecuted. The mayor and the police chief certainly wanted that. That did not happen. As you mentioned, all criminal charges have been dropped against Jussie Smollett. And Chris, we were talking earlier about the potential fact that he could face federal charges for mailing himself a fake death threat, according to police. But we're hearing from federal investigators today that that case, too, may also be unresolved. So Jussie Smollett could walk away from all of this without any criminal charges.
And you've got the police union calling for prosecutors to be investigated, right?
Yeah, they were incredibly upset about this. I want to show you a statement that they released not long ago to NBC News. They had said in that statement, in part, that they thought the entire prosecutor's office should be recused, saying since Kimberly Foxx has taken office, she has transformed the prosecutor's office to a political arm of an anti-police movement. We renew our call for a federal investigation of her role in this case and expect the media to conduct a thorough investigation. So that, of course, is not going to happen. The county prosecutor's office says this case is resolved, but the Fraternal Order of Police is calling this case just an outrage.
Miguel, thank you for that. To weigh in on all of this, Midwin Charles, attorney from the law firm Midwin Charles & Associates, Noah Rothman, associate editor for Commentary Magazine and an MSNBC contributor and author of Unjust. Eddie Glaude is back with me. So, Midwin, the mayor's not happy. The police certainly aren't happy. Prosecutors are under attack. What in the world is going on here?
Well, you know, I find it ironic that you have a mayor not happy with someone who's alleged to have lied. You have a police department not happy with someone who is alleged to have lied, when this is a Chicago Police Department that we're talking about. Where was this same energy when Laquan McDonald was shot and when that evidence about his shooting was, taken away from people from seeing, to the point where the family had to sue for people to see the video? So I just think that the Chicago Police Department, unfortunately, is not the shining example of credibility when it comes to telling the truth. And you can believe that and also believe that there are certain things in Jussie Smollett's story that do not add up.
Sure, but prosecutors say, to defend themselves, this was routine. It was a nonviolent crime.
Right.
We often settle these, but this was not a routine kind of investigation. When you look at the number of police, the number of investigators, the number of man hours that were
Right, and I understand that, and I remember when when they gave the press conference, the police officer said that they had expended so many resources on trying to get at this story. That was their decision to make. The fact that they, complained about Jussie Smollett taking resources away from really serious crimes bodes upon their decision to do that, and their decision to decide to sort of investigate this at a greater, with more intensity.
And I kept thinking back yesterday to the original press conference where there was so much emotion from the police chief in particular back in February. I just want to remind folks, here's a little bit of that.
Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? How can an individual who's been embraced by the city of Chicago turn around and slap everyone in this city in the face?
I mean, just like that, a lot of people who felt terrible for Jussie Smollett turned, right? I mean, Eddie, none of us knows exactly what happened here. We may have our opinions, but we don't know what happened here. Right. But are we past the point where reason and the rule of law, kind of prevails? I mean, we're in this place where swift and clever and getting there before anybody else and getting a lot of clicks seems to be really pushing a lot of the news, a lot of the stories, and maybe even, in some cases, putting pressure on the justice system.
Right. So I think it's important for us to breathe, to slow down, and then to assess the facts, to not engage in a kind of surface reading of this, because we've responded to the Jussie Smollett case in various ways. When it first happened, there was a wild expression of emotion, outrage. And then the police had their press conference, and then there was a wild expression of outrage with regards to what Jussie Smollett allegedly had done, had lied. And now here we are in this moment. So we need to breathe, slow down, pause, and think about this in a careful and nuanced way. So we don't have all the evidence. We don't know why why Kim Foxx and the prosecutor's office in Cook County allowed him to walk out without pleading guilty. We don't know why that's the case. We don't know why Smollett decided to come out and then give a press conference declaring his innocence, given the deal that has just been struck. So there are a lot of things that we don't know. But what we do know is that we shouldn't give a damn what Rahm Emanuel thinks. What we do know,
that's what I'm trying to say.
What we do know is that we shouldn't give a damn what the CPD says with regards to this, because in other instances where there's clear evidence, where somebody has been killed, where the police officers have engaged in illegal behavior, I didn't see this kind of fury.
Not at all.
So Jussie Smollett, I'm not trying to make him a paragon of virtue. The case is murky. There's some questions to be asked. But I'd be damned if I allow Rahm Emanuel to come out and act like this, as if he's the defender of justice, when what the people of Chicago have gone through. Right? So this is part of the problem. This is part of the issue. Why am I touching you, Noah? I don't know why. This is part of the issue. This is the issue. We want justice. We want people to do right. We want the rule of law. But don't be hypocrites.
Well, we also want people to feel that the system is working. And you have all these people coming out yesterday. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. It looks a little Keystone Cop-ish. and frankly, now you have a state legislator who's coming out and saying, I want state tax breaks taken away from any production company that hires Jussie Smollett. I mean,
what I hear around this table is outrage over the perception that there is a two-tiered justice system. And that would be worthy of outrage. And that is why
that's
this
fact,
case,
by the way.
Allow me to make my case.
That's fact. That's fact.
And that's why this case deserves the kind of outrage that I've heard expressed around this table. The prosecutors in this case say that this was, quote, disposed of in alternative manner. That is an understatement. This individual was allowed to get off while paying a bond. His bond was not discharged. While performing community service. He never entered a plea agreement. He never had to say he was guilty of anything. If Jussie Jussie Smollett supporters were consistent, they would be calling this an outrage, state-supported extortion. He is being relieved of his money and his freedom is being taken away in the form of this agreement with prosecutors while never having to confess to a crime. A lot of people would say, look, hate crime hoaxes, which are frequently common, unfortunately, are usually not prosecuted, in fact, because the charge is pretty minor. It's usually a misdemeanor charge, a false statement to police, and it's often the case that these are not prosecutable cases. This was a prosecuted case. We're just not calling it that. That's a two-tiered justice system.
Is it? Is that where we should be focusing our outrage here?
Well, I think you cannot discuss this case without looking at the full context of what's happening. It's a black man, a gay man, who claimed that he was the victim of a hate crime.
And Rahm Emanuel said this morning he was given special treatment.
And that was the police department's decision to do that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
It was not the police department's decision. It was the state's attorney's office.
No.
Prosecutors stand by their charges.
Excuse me. No, in terms of the investigation, in terms of all the resources expended, they made the conscious decision to elevate this in terms of the amount of resources that they put into it. Now, do they perhaps regret doing that? Maybe. But from the very beginning, when a victim, and by the way, it is not common for people to fake hate crimes. That is absolutely not correct. But if someone walks into a police department and says, listen, I've been the victim of a hate crime, the job of the police department is to investigate whether that person is true or not. It is not their job to leak information from unnamed sources to discredit that person. And that happened from the very beginning. And that's why you have so many people thinking, oh my God, he's so guilty, he's so guilty. Why do people think that? Because from the very beginning, information had been leaked from inside the police department discrediting Jussie Smollett. Now, is his story shady? Yeah. Is it a little, some murky things? Absolutely. But you cannot divorce how the police department reacted here at all.
Yeah, and I think you also can't divorce a reasonable person's question, and I've heard this from folks out there yesterday saying, I don't understand if they say that they've got the case, why they're not prosecuting the case.
Prosecutors do that all the time.
I know.
They do this all the time.
For people who don't see this at work all the time, there are questions.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.